Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Life Debate.
Well, good evening. I'm James MacPherson with Danica, Giorgio and Caleb Bond, who was doing his grocery shopping this afternoon. Do you take your own bags, Caleb, to the shops, or do you pay for the paper ones?
If I have the foresight to take my own bags, I will. But sometimes I don't think that far ahead, and so I have to buy the paper ones.
What do you do, Danica?
I take my own bags.
I knew you
Always.
Yeah, like 95% of the time.
Do you have them in the back of your car?
I have one in the back of my car and two at home.
Yeah, see, that's where I come a cropper. I don't have them in the car because I do a lot of just, I'll just walk up to the shop sort of. So I'll have bags at home, but then if I'm in the car and I stop off somewhere, I don't have the bags.
What do you do, James?
Our local supermarket, they provide boxes. It's all their excess boxes. They just have a pile of them.
Oh, yeah.
And so you just pile all your groceries into a box.
And you don't have to pay for them.
You don't have to pay for it. It's
That's
fantastic.
great.
That's actually a very good idea.
Yeah. All right, then let's get into the show. Here's what's coming up tonight. The majority of Australians say the Albanese government should ban social media companies from using algorithms to decide what we see online without our permission. Is this a sensible attempt to wrestle control back from big tech, or just another opportunity for Canberra to interfere with our lives? Both One Nation and the LNP have stalls at this week's Brisbane exhibition. And while they may both describe themselves as conservative, I tell you what, their approach to the public is very different. We'll compare and contrast the two parties at the Ekka later in the show. And a Sydney council wants to make English compulsory on business signs. Good idea? Or just another council needlessly making other people's businesses its business? We'll talk about all of that shortly, but first there are growing calls for primary schools to ban or at least dramatically limit children's access to iPads and laptops. Many people fear the very technology we were told would revolutionise education may well be revolutionising it, but entirely the wrong direction. Thousands of parents have signed a petition arguing that falling NAPLAN results are at least in part due to an over-reliance on technology in the classroom. They say the use of computers is hindering the development of foundational skills such as handwriting, numeracy, comprehension and concentration. Centre for Independent Studies Director of Education Research, Blaise Joseph, told journalists 20 years ago there was all this excitement around technology and education and everyone was saying, this is awesome, kids are going to be so much more engaged. Well, all that has turned out to be wrong. It's exactly the opposite. It makes students less engaged in learning and it makes it harder for them to concentrate. Well, I think these parents make a very good point. If the great technological revolution in education has produced kids who are less able to concentrate, less engaged with learning and more dependent on screens, maybe the revolutionary idea isn't giving them another iPad, it's taking the iPad away, Danica. I'm in favour of this.
No, I actually am not in favour of this. I think that laptops or any sort of technology in the classroom is actually very important to equip children with digital literacy that they will need to take into their adult years when they do go to university and when they enter the workforce. When I was in school, I think we were about 10 years old, I was in year 5, we were either the first school in the state or even maybe in the country to get laptops. So we had them very early on, and I felt like I was quite a whiz at using the computer back then because I did learn so many important skills. But what really carried it through and what I remember in particular throughout the high school years was and what was valuable to me was learning how to use Excel, for example. So I think it actually equips you with what you will need for the future. There is one point that I will agree with this author, the guy that you mentioned. He says there's a connection between actually handwriting something down and retaining it in our brain. When you physically write something down, you retain it and you can retrieve it more with success. That, I think he is absolutely spot on. The art of physically writing it out, I think, helps you commit it to memory. But the reality is we live in a technologically advanced world. We've got to get with the times, and that does include children in the classrooms. I actually think it can be a very, very good resource.
I think there are some things you can't unstitch. I don't think you'll ever completely remove technology from the classroom, and indeed there is a place for technology in the classroom. But I think you can quite fairly say that we went too far on it. And all of these points are entirely correct about distraction and all this sort of thing. I mean, I remember I was sort of in that generation of 10, 15 years ago in high school, where you were encouraged to bring your own laptop to school, and it was basically the laptop is used in all facets of education, in every classroom, etc. And I can tell you that I was not always performing schoolwork on my laptop in the class.
You don't say.
Yeah, I know. I hate to tell you. Hate to tell my teachers that I wasn't always focused on school.
Well, you were probably writing columns for the Adelaide Advertiser.
Well, indeed, or I was reading them, reading newspapers from interstate and looking up all this sort of stuff because that's what I was interested in. I mean, the teacher was prattling on about maths or something, a bugger that. I'll look up something that I want to know about. So I made my own fun, and I'm sure I'm not the only kid who's ever done that, and not the only kid that would be doing it at this very moment. So I think we need to seriously rethink our use of technology in the classroom. Obviously, you've had states that have moved towards banning mobile phones in the classroom, and I think that's been a great first step. But I think we should look further than that and say that, first and foremost, I'd say you don't have students bringing their own devices of any kind to school, so they're not using their own laptops. If they're using a laptop, it's a school-provided one that is given to you at the start of the class for the purpose of doing some sort of classwork with, or the teacher says, OK, we're going to do an exercise now that requires a computer. We either go to the computer room or we bring out the laptops on which you do that. And apart from that, I'd say if you can expunge it from the classroom beyond that, it's generally a good thing. And I'd say and I've advocated for this for a long time, is that they should give every student a fountain pen and they can rediscover the joy of handwriting with a fountain pen. I think that would, do you want to bring technology into the classroom? Let's regress a little bit and introduce them to the joys of writing with a fountain.
That's a very Caleb thing to say. I think it's very, very sweet. Well, I'm surprised to hear that people are being told, that kids are being told to bring their own laptops into the classroom. Because,
well, I was.
Well, we weren't. We were handed school laptops, which we were to take home because we had to complete homework assignments on that laptop, but it was given to us by the school and then obviously handed back upon graduation or when we had to upgrade the computer.
Well, this has been one of the changes, right? Because I remember many years ago, schools were saying, enrol here and we'll provide your child with a laptop. Now you've got schools like St Joseph's Primary and Schofields here in Sydney who are advertising, come to our school and your child will not use a laptop at all, at least in their primary years, because of, as you've raised, cognitive function and motor skills are foundational for everything else. And if they're not given time to develop, they don't. And that's the concern.
Why can't they work in tandem, James? Why can't they work hand in hand?
Well, I mean, you mentioned, you were at an advantage because you learned to use an Excel spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
So why can't you have computer studies or computer literacy as a standalone subject or as a standalone period within class time that is separate from your literacy and numeracy, which is done with a pen and paper, so you get the best of both?
It's because when you have to start writing long-form essays, you're not going to start writing that on a pen and paper.
Granted, but that would be in sort of later years of primary school, high school, but grades 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when they're still developing those foundational skills.
But there are also a lot of educational programs on a laptop. That's my point. There are a lot of educational programs plugged into a laptop.
So that becomes a replacement for what would otherwise happen in the classroom?
Yeah, but I don't think that's a problem.
But I think it really has been proved to be a problem.
Screen time is a big problem. We're trying to reduce the amount of screen time kids are getting at every point. So
no, I get that.
The last thing you want to do is replace a classroom teacher with a computer program.
And some of them are also plugged in to fit in with different children's needs as well, which helps the teacher out too.
Oh, well, but that's then getting into an individual, each school can make an individual assessment. If a kid, for a particular reason, can't write because he's got his hand cut off, then sure, maybe he'll be using a laptop or some other system. I don't know. But that doesn't mean that, by and large, every kid should then be using a computer all the time in the classroom, does it?
No, but I'm not talking about physical injuries. I'm talking about learning. Kids that need a little bit more help with their development. I'm saying that there are specific computer programs that help kids at every single level.
OK, so that is available then to individual kids who specifically need that individual help. But that doesn't mean that you then apply that out to the rest of the classroom and say, OK, well, now the rest of the class will be using laptops.
But I don't see what the problem is with using a laptop. I think it's such an important educational tool.
Well, I think that the data says that NAPLAN results have been going backwards, and it seems to coincide with the introduction of technology into the classroom because, as you said, concentration levels have dropped. When you physically write something, you remember and retain it better.
I do agree with the physical writing. I definitely agree with it.
So you've got comprehension and
knowledge.
concentration are both diminished because of devices in the classroom. Comprehension and concentration are pretty foundational to the rest of your education, right?
No, I still think, though, that a laptop is important. I do think it equips kids with the skills that you need. It's just far more advanced to use a laptop. Now, that I think in conjunction with handwriting, I don't think we should ever get rid of laptops or technology in the classroom.
Well, I wonder if the kids are using social media in the classroom because, you know, the social media ban. Do you remember the social media ban? I wonder how well that's going. In fact, I was only thinking the other day I was on a tram and there was I assume it was Dad, and two young girls. They would have looked about, I don't know, 11 or 12, and they're playing away on the Snapchat. And I thought, the social media ban, it's working so well.
You still send Snapchats, don't you, Caleb?
No, I've not used Snapchat for quite some time.
A couple of face filters?
No, I'm not. You might use the face filters, Danica, but I certainly don't. But I thought, this social media ban is going so well. Of course, that was the beginning of the federal government saying that, you know, we want to regulate social media in some large way. We believe there are harms being caused by social media. And, of course, there are. So they came up with this social media ban. But, again, I don't think that has worked particularly well. But another idea that is being shopped around to the federal government is that they should regulate the algorithms on social media services. And indeed, there's a new study or a poll that's been done by Essential Research, which has found that a whopping 71% of Australians apparently want the government to regulate what you see on social media in the form of mandating an opt-in feature for social media algorithms. So basically, you would be able to see, say I want to see content showed to me via the algorithm that the social media service decides, or presumably you'd be able to have it come to you as people post it based on who you follow. And they then break this down into the political parties that people support. 76% of Labor people want it, 72% of Coalition people, 71% of One Nation people, 68% of Greens voters. So it would seem there is a huge amount of support for this, apparently. 6%, only 6%. of people said they either somewhat or strongly disagreed with the idea of the government mandating that you should be able to opt out of a social media algorithm. And I get on the face of it that it sounds great, because if you can opt out of the algorithm, you know, it's meant to give you more control of social media. I will note the one social media platform at the moment that voluntarily allows you to opt out of the algorithm is X, which is the one, of course, that the net nanny, the e-safety Karen, seems to have most problems with, even though they will let you use the service in the order of people you followed posting things when they post them, as opposed to what they want to send to you. But what concerns me about this is that it becomes a slippery slope, that we say, OK, the government effectively regulates the algorithm by saying you can opt out of it. If you can say to a social media service, and I've always advocated that they should be treated in the same way as a publisher, but if you can say to a social media service that they must give you an option to consume content on that service, which you have no obligation to sign up to, which is a privately owned company, a website that you don't have to go to, we'll now dictate the way in which you show content on that. Well, here we are doing a television program. We're owned by a private company. The three of us, in conjunction with our producer and our bosses, choose the stories that we want to present to viewers on this show, and we choose the order in which they are presented to people on this show, because we think, you know, this story is most important, this is what is most interesting, that's what we're going to give to the viewers, because this is what we think will keep viewers watching from the top of the hour to the end of the hour. We're doing this all the time. I've worked in newspapers. I'm there as a chief of staff having these discussions with the editor about what are we going to put on pages 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. because we want someone to A, pick up the paper and buy it, and then keep flicking the pages of the newspaper. We've been doing algorithms in a more manual way for a very long time, and the news media still does and always will do. But we're going to tell social media companies that they can't use their own algorithms. I think that's a dangerous territory to head into.
I disagree with you that the government is regulating algorithms by this move. They're not regulating anything. They're simply providing consumers with choice, which I thought you would have been in favour of.
Well, but but could they then come and say to a newspaper, well, you can't choose the order in which the stories go? Because it's fundamentally the same thing.
Well, I think it's fundamentally different, and I think to draw a line between those two is a bit of a stretch. That
no, but it's I would order a newspaper because I want someone to buy it because they like page 1, and then they get to page 3 and go, "That was a good story," so I'm going to flip the page and keep reading. Like it's the principle of trying to keep people engaged with the product is exactly the same as social media, except that social media is doing it, by automated means.
I think social media stands in a class of its own because it's so ubiquitous for everybody, and also because the way they work the algorithm is more than... I mean, we sit around a table and we think, what do we believe people will be most interested in? Whereas social media companies literally monitor how long you watch a particular video, how long you, look at a certain picture, and then start to formulate a whole dossier on you personally and direct things your way. I think that's very different to the way a newspaper is put together or a TV show, and to suggest that the government would say we're going to start regulating social media companies to provide opt-in or opt-out with algorithms, and then, that's on Friday, and then Monday, Elbo's ringing News24 to say, hey, listen, I want to have input into the way you present the late debate is a bit of a stretch.
But I think this is a slippery slope that we're heading down to. I mean, as Caleb pointed out, are we going to have the net nanny or some sort of a bureaucrat sitting in their office in Canberra dictating what should be coming up on people's social media feeds as per their algorithm? Because that's the slope that... But once you start opening that door...
They're giving you the ability to determine whether you want the algorithm or not.
But the thing is, with algorithms, I actually think that they are very useful. I like the algorithm because it provides me with what I am most interested in looking at. So, for example, if you are looking at cooking videos on your social media, your algorithm will start flooding you with more cooking videos. I don't see what the problem is that, because that is content that I would genuinely engage in, that I generally enjoy. It's not something that's foreign and random to me that's popping up like, I don't know, Caleb Bond on the weekend.
Oh, you don't want to see that?
On the contrary, you and I sit here talking about cooking for 10 minutes, and next thing I look at Instagram and I'm inundated with cooking videos, and I've got no interest in cooking at all.
Yeah, but that's
I should have the ability to say I don't want them to do that.
But that's not only just a social media thing. Your phone is listening to you all the time for all sorts of apps and for a range of things. That's not just solely a social media issue.
But I would love to have the ability to say to Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I don't want you doing that. I only want to look at the stuff that I have asked to look at. Keep everything out.
But you've already sort of programmed yourself. You say I've asked to look at it, but you've already programmed the algorithm to give you what you're asking for.
I didn't have a choice, though.
But hang on. Hang on.
You want a choice in the matter.
James, you did have a choice. Do you have to use Facebook?
No.
Do you have to use X?
Yes.
Why?
For this job, you have to use X.
No, you don't.
Yes,
You're not forced to do it.
Every news person in the country is on X constantly. You know that better than anybody else.
All right, say you're average...
Wait, was I right about that?
No, you don't have to.
I don't think you have to.
I think there are people who don't.
You could be watching YouTube...
Chris Kenny, for a very long time, was not on... I think he's just recently rejoined it. For a long time, was not on X.
Even Chris Kenny uses X.
But for the average Joe Blow in the street, do you have to use X? Do you have to use YouTube? Do you have to use Facebook?
I just can't believe you're arguing
for
consumers to have no choice.
No, but the choice is whether or not you use the service. So you have opted in to use the service, and then, having voluntarily begun using the service, you said, I don't like the service, I want the government to intervene and change the way the service works.
I would like the government to intervene on my behalf so that I can have the social media experience I would like, rather than having it foisted upon me by Facebook executives who do not have my best interests at heart. They only have their top dollar at heart.
I never thought I would hear the day.
Hey, 70% of Australians agree with me. Only 6% agree with you.
I never thought I'd hear the day where James MacPherson is calling for more government intervention.
More regulation.
He literally wants another hand in his pocket from the net nanny and the government bureaucrats.
No, they're giving me the power to choose. They're not choosing for me.
No, James, you already have the power to choose. Just stop.
Use it.
Just stop. You just don't use it right.
Argument.
Well, again, you've got the power to look at whatever videos you want, and your feed is providing it with you. Now, unless you want to look at Caleb on a Sunday then...
What's wrong with that, by the way?
There's nothing wrong with that.
What's wrong with me on a Sunday?
I also think
it's as an example.
It's a fallacy to make the argument that government intervention is always bad. Otherwise, you don't have any... The point of government is that it does intervene.
But in your private usage, what you're looking at on your social media, that you want intervention in that, though?
No, it's not intervening in what I look at.
It is intervening. It is intervening.
No, it's not saying anything about what I look at. It's giving me the opportunity to determine what I look at.
It's government intervention. I never thought I'd hear you say it, James MacPherson, but we learn everything.
He's forced to look at Instagram.
He's forced to look at everything, this guy. He lives this very, very sad life. Now, look, it is that time. It is that time.
What they would have said say for us, Danica. You're saying he lives a sad life.
No,
he does a fair bit of it with us.
He absolutely, that's probably what the saddest part of it is, let's be honest.
You two are the one respite from my sad life.
Spending time with Caleb and I is the saddest part of James MacPherson's day, let me tell you that.
I could get the government to intervene there. Choice.
The net nanny would be all over it like a rash. She'd love that. She'd love that. OK, now it is that time of the year, the best time of the year in Queensland, of course. The Ekka is on, the show that everyone of every age loves. And this year there is a special guest at the Ekka. Her name is Pauline Hanson. Yes, One Nation has actually set up its own booth there at the one of the pavilions, costing about $3,900 for a 3 metre by 3 metre spot, according to the Ekka leasing guide. The LNP is also there, but as you can see by this vision here, Pauline Hanson's proving quite popular. Now, what makes her stand different, aside from the fact that punters can meet and greet with the leader herself, is that she's also selling merchandising. So there's a $25 Make Albo Go Away hat, a $35 Pauline Hanson bobblehead figurine, a $5 pack of playing cards featuring a sepia digitally altered image of Miss Hanson as a 1950s housewife manually washing clothes with an Australian flag draped over her shoulder. I like this. This is amazing ingenuity. I think this is absolutely fantastic. Now, the LNP, let's do a bit of a compare and contrast. If we can just bring up the LNP, please. Oh, yeah, they're holding a cabinet meeting at the Ekka versus Pauline Hanson meeting and greeting. I don't know about you two, but I think there's one that looks fun and one maybe that doesn't look as much fun. Now, I have to say, this is such smart politics by One Nation, taking Pauline Hanson out into the Ekka to meet with people, to meet with her supporters, and they are capitalising on not only her polling but her success right now. So what better way to throw her into the limelight, to send her to one of the most popular festivals of the year, to have her photos taken, and by all accounts, she's enjoying it.
Well, I'm here at the Ekka and the One Nation stand. I've had a fantastic time. I've met so many people that are having a wonderful day here. So if you're at the Ekka, please come down to the One Nation stand. I'm out having a go. I won't be here for the rest of the week. I've got Canberra. That's where I've got to go down there and fight on the floor of Parliament for you, the people.
What I have noticed about One Nation's social media in the last few months, and I've said this before, they are doing it so well compared to the other parties. Pauline Hanson is not talking policy at you. She's putting herself at your level. Even with that video, look, I'm not going to be there all day. It's like she's having a chat to a mate. It's not, I am, you know, Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, and I love the Ekka. It's not a pre-recorded, pre-rehearsed Anthony Albanese script. It's very one-on-one and very relatable. But even when she was spending time overseas, when she was in London, she had those videos when she was sitting in the back of the car and she was just talking at the camera very off the cuff. It didn't look scripted. So whatever One Nation is doing right now, whoever is behind the social media campaigns, the ad campaigns, I would say, well done, because it's working. And to put Pauline at the Ekka, brilliant.
Well, I think James Ashby is behind most of this, and he's a marketing genius, frankly, when it comes to politics. Of course, you'd be at the Ekka. They're expecting 430,000 people at the exhibition this week, so Pauline Hanson would be mad not to be there. I think the interesting point of difference between the LNP stand and the One Nation stand is that the LNP stand is providing people with policy information. The One Nation stand is providing people with an opportunity for a selfie with Pauline Hanson.
Exactly.
And if you talk to a lot of One Nation supporters, they tend to be far more sold on Pauline Hanson, the person, and a little less au fait with the policies, but we like Pauline Hanson and we believe in her. With the LNP, it's more about the policies. When it comes to merch, I mean, so you tell me, you go to the Ekka, right? So
Yeah.
You're not really interested in politics at the Ekka.
No.
So you could go to the One Nation stand and get a Pauline Hanson bobblehead to put on the dash of your white Camry, Caleb. Or...
My white Camry.
You're talking to me about that before the show. Or you can go to the LNP stand. Do you know what they're offering? What they're giving away at them?
Hit me.
They're giving away a chore chart. So it's an LNP chore chart. So you can put all the chores for the household on the chart. It's got an LNP logo on it. Or an LNP height chart. You know those height charts you used to have? So what would you rather, a Make Albanese Go Away hat or a chore chart to put on the fridge with the LNP logo on it?
How embarrassing. If I saw a chore chart with the LNP logo on someone's house, I'd be going, where the heck did you
go,
get
what a
this
nerd.
from?
Why
What
would
a
you want your
nerd.
political party to be associated with chores?
But,
that's bad.
But this is emblematic of just how far more agile One Nation is than the major parties. I mean, they just get the new landscape much better, which is why they're doing so well. People are sick of the old way of doing things because they look at the old way of doing things and say, well, it hadn't delivered very much for me, and so I'm willing to go and look at something completely different. I'm willing to say, actually, you know what? I'll make my mind up about policy later. I just need something else to believe in. And at the moment, they'll believe in One Nation and Pauline Hanson. And so all they need to do is rock up and say, well, here's the product. Now, the product they're selling is not the policy. The product they're selling is the person. The product they're selling is the mood. It's the vibe. It's the we don't like the way things are going. Here's someone who talks differently, treats you differently, is available to you. I mean, you know, you wouldn't see Anthony Albanese or I suspect Angus Taylor, or in the case, you know, they've got the state government having a cabinet meeting up there. David Crisafulli.
How boring.
Do you think anyone cares?
How
I know.
boring.
But you wouldn't have these people manning a stand at the Ekka so that the average Joe Blow can come up and have a yarn with them. You know, their interactions with the public are stage managed mostly. You know, you're more likely with an opposition leader to perhaps run into them in the street, but most of your interactions with the public are stage managed, and there's staff there making sure that everything stays on track, and, you know, we'll move you on if someone asks you a difficult question and all these sorts of things, right? It's just so completely different. And that is fundamentally why One Nation is working.
Yep.
And the faster the Labor Party and the coalition realise that, the better it will be for them. But I think, as I asked Ross Cadell this question one evening when I was hosting PML, I said, why didn't you come up with the Fire the Liar ad campaign, the fundraiser, before One Nation did? And he said, fundamentally, we're just not as agile as they are.
Wow.
And that is basically it.
I don't think we have seen an on-the-ground campaign like it in politics at the moment, in the last decade, in my view at least, than what we're seeing right now from One Nation.
Remember a couple of weeks ago when Barnaby Joyce yelled at his dog during an ABC interview?
Oh, yeah.
The next day on the One Nation website, they had Barnaby Joyce dog leashes that you could buy
That's
called
brilliant.
Shut Up or Be Quiet or,
Sit down, eh?
whatever it was. They're incredibly quick. Pauline Hanson might have some allies at the Strathfield Council here in Sydney where it comes to social cohesion, because the council there has just moved a motion that would compel local businesses to put shop signs in English. It doesn't mean they can't have signs in other languages as well, but the motion would make it compulsory for them to have English signs. And this is important because in Strathfield, 45,000 residents, 73% of whom speak a language other than English. And indeed, about that percentage were born overseas as well. Consequently, and we'll show you some vision, when you walk through the suburb of Strathfield, it's not unusual at all to walk past shops where you've got no idea, optometrist, I know what that says, but many of the shops, there's no English whatsoever. The motion was carried 4 votes to 2. But what's particularly interesting is the motion was moved not by some white supremacist, but by a South Korean immigrant, Councillor Esther Kim. She moved to Australia 49 years ago, And she says, as a local in Strathfield and as an immigrant, it's crazy having all of these different languages, but no English. She said English is the glue that binds us all together. How can we ever have social cohesion if, at a minimum, we can't communicate with each other? So it seems perfectly sensible to mandate in a suburb of Australia that you should have English shop signs. She said she was astonished that the opposition to this was led by Labor councillors who were not immigrants at all, but white Australians were the ones opposed to this. And that's the thing I find fascinating about this. You've got, as I said, an immigrant councillor saying we should have English signs, and you've got English locals saying, no, we don't want to impose that on people. I think the premise here is that when you come to this country, you move to Australia. You don't come here and demand Australia moves to you. And I think that's the difference. They're not outlawing signs in other languages. They're just saying, as a minimum, we should have English. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think this is absolutely brilliant. Finally, we actually see a council with some common sense. Well, why are other councils across the country following suit? I find it fascinating that this came from a migrant, yet, as you mentioned, James, you've got white people in the council, the only ones opposing it. And I thought about it and I thought, you know, I feel like they're just preconditioned to always go, oh, we can't offend people. It's like a second nature. No, well, we can't do that because we might offend. It's this white guilt that's constantly thrust. No, in the end, people come to this country to assimilate, and we are a predominantly English-speaking nation. Yes, people bring their own language and their own culture. But in the end, you've got to assimilate with our way of life. I don't go to Russia, for example, and demand there to be English signs when I'm in Russia.
I think you should give it a go, Danica.
Oh.
I'd like to see that.
OK, well, maybe one day, Caleb, I might just trot myself off to Moscow. I don't know yet. I haven't quite decided.
You might never see Danica again.
That's right.
That's what he wants in the end. Now, I have to say, the very first time I went to Strathfield, and I've only been once, my first thought was, wow, there are a lot of signs in Chinese. That was the initial thought that I had, and I was there for the state election campaign, and that was my first thought, that everything was in Chinese. And it's just something that you notice when you go to, I guess, very multicultural suburbs. And again, that is absolutely fine. But we are a predominantly English-speaking nation, and in the end, people need to be able to participate and put up their hand and say, I'm trying to be part of your country.
Well, you want Chinese, go down to Hurstville and have a look around there. I mean, you say, Danica, people come here to assimilate. They should come here to assimilate. I think some people don't, unfortunately. And you would think that if you went to another country, that you would do your best to fit into it and use the language of that country. I don't understand why you would go, OK, I'm moving to another country, presumably because you think that is a better place to go than the one that you've come from, and then make very little effort to be part of that country in a meaningful way that contributes not just to your ethnic community and is available to your ethnic community, but is available to all people. And so I think it is absolutely fair and right that we would ask that a business conducts itself in English so that all Australian people can be part of it, not just people who come from the same ethnic background as you. You know, you wouldn't get away with it in most parts of the world, I suspect, and we should not be so accommodating ourselves. Now, of course, we're told renewable energy, best thing since sliced bread, cheapest form of energy, don't worry about it, it'll work all the time, except if you have a solar eclipse, because they're going to have a solar eclipse over in the Arctic and Europe. And they're very worried now over in the UK that they're going to run out of power. They're not going to have enough. They're going to have to turn on all this fossil fuels again. Have a listen to this from the Telegraph in London. They say the slump, that is caused by the fact that the moon is going to block out the sun, could knock out as much as 1.3 gigawatts of supply, according to the National Energy System Operator, which runs Britain's electricity grid. That is enough electricity to power roughly 500,000 homes. Gas-fired power stations will have to be turned on to make up some of the shortfall alongside other sources of electricity. And indeed, Octopus Energy, which is the biggest energy company in the UK. Interesting name, I have to say. But they've asked people not to turn their washing machines and dishwashers and all these sorts of
here we go.
energy-intensive things on between 6 and 8 p.m. on Wednesday because they're worried that the solar eclipse is going to cause the country to run out of power.
Oh, seriously. You know, I'm having flashbacks / PTSD to when we were told to turn off our washing machines and dishwashers during a heat wave here in New South Wales. And now, apparently, the solar eclipse is going to impact the energy grid as well. I mean, where does it end? Where does it end? In a big bang and a big blowout?
Well, this will come as a massive shock to Chris Bowen, won't it?
Oh,
because
gosh.
doesn't he always boast that nothing can stop the sun or the wind?
Energy must be secure. Renewable energy is a secure form of energy. The Australian sun cannot be interrupted by a war or anything else. Solar energy has to travel 150 million kilometres from the sun. It doesn't have to travel the 150 kilometres of the Straits of Hormuz.
Yep, sun cannot be interrupted by a war. Can be interrupted by the moon, though, and nighttime, which happens fairly regularly.
And geniuses like Chris Bowen.
For Chris Bowen, who always talks about, you know, energy security, that the last solar eclipse in the UK was in 1999. And when that occurred, no one even thought twice about whether or not they should use their washing machine or their dishwasher. Here we are just 27 years later, and all of a sudden everybody's being told, try not to use your power while the eclipse is taking place. And we call this progress?
I know.
Wasn't it? Remember once upon a time it was don't look outside during an eclipse, or you have to have your special glasses on.
Yes,
Now it's don't use your power during the... How we have evolved as humans over time.
Yeah, we're absolutely evolving backwards. All right, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, the Reserve Bank leave interest rates alone, but they warn the only thing keeping the economy going is high immigration. That's coming up next. Well, if you believe tomorrow's papers, we'd be in a lot of trouble if it wasn't for our migrants, Danica.
Yeah, indeed. Let's have a look at the Oz tomorrow. Migrants carry ALP economy. Australia's economic recovery will rely on higher immigration, the Reserve Bank has warned, with productivity growth going backwards and unemployment to jump, placing Labor's economic agenda under increased pressure as Anthony Albanese works on a plan to slash migration back to budget targets amid One Nation's ascendancy and a divided Labor caucus. Reserve Bank Governor Michelle Bullock says she is concerned that productivity is so low and population growth is set to be a key driver of higher GDP growth. I mean, this is really nothing new. We've known for many years that migration is propping up the economy right now, because had it not been for Labor's record migration, we would have been in a recession years ago. Now, we still don't have a plan from Labor on how it's going to tackle migration. And above all this, it's going to have an impact regardless on GDP growth. So, I mean, Labor has buggered it up from the beginning.
It's not real economic growth.
It's not.
I mean, we're just sort of saying, OK, we have higher demand because we have more people. But it doesn't mean we're actually making anything or meeting that demand properly. It just further exacerbates the problems we already have. But we go, oh, phew, it means we've got economic... It's not real economic growth.
It's kind of a national pyramid scheme, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And the government funds it because, of course, you know, they bring the migrants out and then they create jobs in the service economy, like health care and all these other... They go, oh, look, jobs, it's all good. It's not real.
Yeah. So the question becomes, can the government find a way out of this? And you wouldn't be super confident of that, would you, judging by
no.
the geniuses we have in Canberra right now?
Well, don't forget as well, Burke cancelled his speech that he was set to give last week on migration. So let's see, they're clearly divided. So let's see when he does actually make his speech, what Labor is going to come up with when it comes to its immigration figures. Because as we know, more than 1.2 million have come in under Labor's watch. Stay tuned for that one. Also on the front page of the Oz, secret powers for ASIO to probe unis. ASIO is set to get new powers to secretly probe university collaborations with hostile nations after the Education Department rebuked 26 universities over risky research. Universities will be forced to report all dealings with any institution in China, Iran, Russia, Belarus, Brunei, Vietnam or Laos under changes to the Foreign Relations Act before Parliament. Every education and research institution in those countries will be deemed to lack institutional autonomy from their government, meaning hostile or authoritarian governments can meddle in sensitive research ranging from cybersecurity to military and biological warfare. Fantastic. I think this is absolutely terrific because if our institutions are going to be compromised by hostile foreign powers, well, finally, we need something in place. I think that this is fantastic, that they should be probed.
And our universities only have themselves to blame for ASIO now having these powers, because if they had been more vigilant and not allowed, for instance, universities here to do combined research with scientists in Iran on drone technology, of all things, they wouldn't be in this situation. But because they refuse to police themselves, now ASIO will be given the task. I mean, thank God.
The real scandal is that we need to do this in the first place.
Yeah.
You'd think it would be pretty self-evident to universities that, you know, you don't do certain things with China and you don't do certain things with Iran and other countries. But, you know, the almighty dollar seems to be more important to them. And so we've had to step in. Sad, but needed.
That's it.
No, I think there's another story on the front of the Oz.
Sorry, there is another. Sorry, that was my cue. Albanese's Meat Girls back in their boss. Anthony Albanese's most senior female colleagues have closed ranks around him to deflect allegations he made a crude and sexist joke about Japanese leader Sanae Takahachi's melons, as the Prime Minister refused to apologise for the remarks. Cabinet Ministers Katie Gallagher and Penny Wong, who led Labor's attack on Scott Morrison over the Brittany Higgins scandal, defended Mr Albanese as a supporter of women and said his remarks had been misinterpreted. I trust his assurance regarding misrepresentation of those comments, Senator Gallagher said. I don't know how much longer Senator Gallagher and the likes of Tanya Plibersek can keep dancing around this issue. No, it didn't happen. No, look at the vision yourself. We have seen the vision. We all know what it meant. We didn't all come down in the last shower. Stop trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. And I actually find it so hypocritical because the Mean Girls are apparently the champions of women, but not these sorts of comments.
Yeah, did you hear Tony Abbott on Credlin tonight? And he talked about the Prime Minister needs to be man enough to apologise in person.
Fair enough.
I just thought it's just another example of Tony Abbott understanding the art of a good line, because Angus Taylor made criticisms a couple of days ago, but it just sort of disappeared beneath all the other news. But I just thought that phrase from Tony Abbott saying that the Prime Minister should, quote, man up and apologise. It's just a good line.
I thought we all knew that when you're talking about melons and you're pulling these ones, that it has absolutely nothing to do with the woman's breast. The fact that they're still trying to run this line, that no, it had... Come on. Pull the other one. And the fact that all these women in the Labor, they must know it's a load of garbage. You can't tell me that Tanya Plibersek and Katie Gallagher, as if they don't know what he meant by it, and they're all lining up to defend it. What a joke. On the front of the Daily Telegraph tomorrow, exclusive tobacco crackdown on metro servos to hit petrol prices. Smoking guns is the headline. The nation's largest independent petrol station chain has had stores raided across the country, some of them shut down after a major investigation into the alleged supply and distribution of illegal tobacco, with industry experts warning the scale of the crackdown could increase prices at the Bowser. It's part of a major probe into the fuel giant owned by a wealthy Sydney family. And good to see some crackdown on all of this stuff, of course. You know, I still don't think it'll really be a drop in the ocean. You can take some cigarettes out of the system, but we know they come in by the container load and there'll be someone else selling them tomorrow if they're not selling them at other places. But, you know, they do have to do this stuff, absolutely. But is it we're going to have one less person smoking tomorrow because of it? Probably not.
But also I'm interested to see what it does to the fuel prices.
Well, indeed, yeah.
But the other question over this is, like you said, you've got 9 stations, right? Was that a coordinated thing?
And this will be the question.
Or was it just individual? It seems a little too many to be not coordinated.
And this is what they've got to look into now, because, yeah, it's a big operation that obviously had multiple stores allegedly selling stuff.
Yeah.
So you've got to wonder, is it organised? Is it people trying to make a buck? I don't know. I mean, it's organised crime obviously is running this whole illicit tobacco thing. So plenty more to come.
Yep. All right, the front page of tomorrow's Herald Sun, shot full of holes, reads the headline. And, of course, talking about potholes, less than 2% of Victorian motorists seeking compensation for damage caused by potholes are receiving payouts, secret government data reveals. Documents obtained under Freedom of Information show drivers are facing virtually impossible odds when seeking repair work payouts for damages caused by the state's broken road network, with 98% turned away. 1,786 of the 1,809 compensation claims were rejected by the Department of Transport. That's over the last 2 financial years. The state's road authority covered repair costs for just 23 drivers. Now, to give you an idea of how crazy that is, at the weekend we saw more than 30 cars damaged by one pothole. That was just on the weekend. And then last month there was another pothole on the Princess Highway that had more than 20 cars damaged. So this is proving to be a major election issue.
Yeah, who would have
thought? Kind of a surprise.
I know, out of everything. I mean, there's got a state with crime, debt, and now potholes are the problem.
I was talking to a mate of mine earlier in Victoria, Evening Pierce, and he was driving while we were on the phone, and he goes, "Oh, I just hit a pothole." And
no.
It's, you know, you're talking to a Victorian and then he's like, "Jesus, is the car still all right?" Because he hit one once and did the rim. It cost him $4,000.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very quickly, the other story on the front page of the Herald Sun: work from home pause fails job. Premier Ben Carroll will delay implementing Victoria's contentious work from home laws until next year, but big employers say the move still falls short and should be scrapped entirely. Ben Carroll delaying the implementation of those controversial laws until after the election. I can't.
Of course he is.
Why? We're going to go to a break. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about a golfer who wanted a birdie and got a fishy. That's next. I'm pretty sure King Charles is still alive, but Danica, you can never be too sure these days, can you?
Well, no. Now, you might remember at home a couple of months ago, a radio station in Essex in the UK by the name of Radio Caroline accidentally announced that the King had died when actually the King was very much alive and well. Well, now a media watchdog investigation has found out why this happened. Are you ready for it? It was done out of curiosity.
Oh.
That was the reason. Out of curiosity. That pre-recorded segment went to air out of curiosity. This was it.
This is Radio Caroline. We have suspended our normal programmes until further notice as a mark of respect following the passing of His Majesty King Charles III.
Yeah, whoopsie. So I'm not sure if that worker that was very curious is curious anymore about his job.
So they've got these obituaries or these announcements pre-recorded, right, in the event that... And he just wanted to know what it sounded like.
Out of curiosity.
So why don't I just bung that one on the air and see how...
And give it a crack.
Wow.
You know, why don't we do that one night? Why don't we just, you know, pronounce the King dead or, you know, breaking news, the Prime Minister has come a cropper and done another Harold Holt. I mean, come on, seriously. Who does that? Oh, I'm just testing the buttons. It's all right.
You just want to know what the announcement sounds like.
Well, don't we all?
Well, you
Don't
go
we all?
first, Caleb. You give that one a whirl and we'll follow suit.
No, I don't think I will be giving that one a whirl. Speaking of giving things a whirl, though, how about a literal whirl? If you happen to be in Greenwich Park in London over the weekend, maybe you thought, you know, the weather is still lovely in London at the moment. I'm going to make the best of the Euro summer. I'm going to go out for a picnic. And then all of a sudden you watched your cucumber sandwiches disappear into the air.
Stranger Things I saw. What? This is gonna ruin my food.
Now, I think he's hit on the most important bit at the end there. This is going to ruin my food. I mean, imagine you're sitting there and this hungry bloody wind thing comes along, tries to take your food away. Would you run a mile, Danica? I feel like you'd think it was going to suck you up and send you up to heaven or something like that.
I would run. Yeah, I would. I'd run away from that. That's frightening. What, you wouldn't run? You just sit there and just be engulfed by the dust?
Yep, take it like a man.
Oh,
Pull out your phone and get exclusive vision.
100%.
South African golfer Carl Schwartzel was teeing off on the 7th hole at the Trump National Golf Club. He was hoping for a birdie. Instead, he got a fishy.
Oh,
Caleb,
that's good.
some would say his golf shot was tailor-made.
Oh, yeah,
that.
I want to know what happens to the fish now.
How do you pass a golf ball?
I know. Eating a golf ball
What if it's
surely
dead?
cannot
It must
be good
dead.
for you.
It has to be dead.
Well, maybe, yeah. Look, he got a hole in one anyway, didn't
Yeah.
he?
Oh, well. The guy who played the shot, he's been carping on about it all. That's it from us. Stick around. Here's the Rita Penny Show. Good night.